Welcome back to Of Ladies and Cowboys by me, Akili Rose. Today we are going to be reading Chapter 2. So just stay tuned and we'll get right into it. Chapter 2. Take Me Home. We rode for hours. The sun was merciless and there was no clouds anywhere to be seen to give us relief. Luckily my hat had not fallen off my head in the course of being saved from the surging waters, so I had that to shade my face. Even so, I could feel my arms and the tip of my nose getting sunburned, especially after I rolled up my sleeves in the heat. I expected Killian to be cold, unyielding, and in a hurry, but he seemed to be paying attention to my movements. Whenever I started to get fidgety, he would pause our journey and take a short break. He did not speak much, but that was fine. I was far too tired to make any sort of conversation, especially after the days of drunkenness began to wear off. Latana, despite my fears, quickly became familiar with me and started to follow me around during our downtime. At first I expected her to nip at me or something, but I soon realized she was simply curious. My initial unease of her started to fade, and I began to rekindle my childhood love for these big animals. Killian let me do whatever I wanted during those breaks. At one point I started to examine his saddlebags, fingering the soft leather and decorations. He watched me without making a move to shoo me away. The next time we stopped, he even went as far as to pull out some jerky and a water canteen for me. When I tried to return the canteen, he shook his head. "You can have it," he simply said before wandering off. The sun began to hang low on the horizon by the time we got off Latana for the last time that day. Killian busied himself with completely untacking Latana and changing out her bridle for a simple rope halter so she could graze without the bit getting in the way. I watched a little jealously, my hands itching to take a brush to her sweaty and dirt-coated fur. Killian glanced at me, standing uselessly to the side, and then sighed. "Have you never set up a camp before?" I wanted to say yes. I had, in fact, been camping before. It was in an RV, in one of those instant pop-up tents. Something told me, however, that such a conversation would make no sense to this man. During our quiet trip through this terribly hot day, I had noticed some obvious problems. The first was that there was no sign of technology or modern anything anywhere I looked. Killian's clothes, tools, and equipment all looked like they belonged in some old Western movie. I started to get the idea that perhaps I really had been transported to the Old West, that my fall had brought me back in time, or perhaps in an entirely different dimension. Maybe I was dead and having one last horrible dream? There were too many questions and theories I could not answer. When I did not reply to him, Killian did not get angry or even appear annoyed. He waited for a few minutes and then turned back to setting up his camp. I broke myself out of my thoughts at his movements and stepped closer. "I'm sorry," I mumbled in shame. "It's nothing. I would have to set up the camp on my own regardless of if you were here or not," he said simply, as he glanced up at me. A stab of guilt hit me, and I felt as quiet as he for a moment. He must have seen my expression change even in the fighting light, because he paused and then got to his feet, facing me. "You've been through a lot today. You need to rest, not to worry about this." Killian's low voice washed over my tired mind like a cooling, gentle breeze. I nodded to him, but despite his assurance, I felt like I should help in some way. Any way. He had saved my life, and so far, asked for nothing in return. Killian did not let me reply and returned back to his work. He unrolled his bedroll and began to set up a small fire pit. I looked over again at Latana for a moment, my fingers itching to pet and caress her, but my still present childhood trauma had made me hesitate to ask. The man finished his work with practiced ease. It took him less than a few minutes for the fire to flicker to life. Although it was not as hot as it had been during the day, the heat from the flames was certainly not needed. The light, however, provided me with a sense of reality in this weird nightmarish state I had been stuck in. For the moment, there was no way home. The riverbed where I had appeared was currently miles away and covered in water. I was not sure Killian would even let me leave if I tried. I settled myself down in front of the fire as 1,000 questions raced through my mind. I could not keep my mouth shut any longer. "Where are we going? I'll need to get back where you found me so I can get home," I asked. There was a quiver in my voice I could not hide. "You'll go with me to Deadbite. There's nothing back there for you. I have some business to attend to, and then I'll help you find home again," Killian said stiffly. "No, you don't understand." I shook my head before curling my knees up to my chest and wrapping my arms around them. "I need to get back there, where you found me." Killian paused, and I could see him looking at me with knitted eyebrows. I could not read his expression in the oncoming darkness, but I would not have wanted to try anyway. The more I tried to figure this guy out, the more I felt like I was trapped in another world. "There's nothing out there," he insisted calmly. Anger roared to life in the pit of my stomach and burned through me. The stress of this strange place, of almost losing my life, of having to face one of my fears, and being forced to travel with some smelly, sweaty stranger began to wash over me. Tears formed in my eyes, but I did my best to hold them back as I bit my lip. I could not hold my frustration in for any longer than a few seconds, though. You think I didn't notice that? But that's the way home. My only chance of maybe getting back. I snapped and buried my face in my knees. Killian fell silent. After a few moments, I heard him get up and leave. I wanted to apologize, but the tears had started to fall already, and I was too ashamed to actually lift my head. Instead, I simply sat in the dirt next to the fire and cried. The only noises I could make out were that of the fire, the horse, and my useless misery. The silence completely unnerved me. At least at home I could hear the sound of the highway a few miles away, barking dogs, unnecessarily loud music from a passing car. There was always something that proved there was life around me. Modern life that I knew and had taken for granted. Now there was not even light aside from the fire and the stars that were slowly blinking into view above me. I wiped at my eyes and lifted my head pitifully, looking for Killian. He was nowhere to be seen. He had completely left the camp. I had some comfort seeing Latana still nearby, which to me meant I had not yet been abandoned. I craned my neck to peek at the sky above me, hoping by some miracle to see the blinking lights of a passing plane. At least then I would know I might still have a chance. There was nothing but the deep blue expanse of night, and a sea of mystifying stars. The fire snapped loudly. I jumped in surprise, throwing myself backwards. My heart was racing and my thoughts went back to the topic of trying to get home. I got to my feet and looked around. There was not much in this desert wasteland, but there were enough oddly shaped hills and dried stream beds to use as landmarks that I thought I might be able to make my way back to the riverbed on my own. If I dared to. Even in my state of desperation, I knew what I was considering was idiotic. I could not help but to want to try. My gaze wandered over to Latana, and I wondered if I could remember how to saddle her. She lifted her head and looked back at me for a moment, swishing her tail with ears perked. I decided quickly against trying. She wasn't mine, after all. I was not about to risk getting shot for stealing her. I needed to get home, not killed. After a few moments of hesitation, I finally made up my mind. There was no knowing what Killian was planning to do with me. He had saved my life, so I trusted him, but I did not actually know this man or his plans. With the waterskin Killian had given me in one hand and my silly hat in the other, I shifted away from the fire. I moved slowly into the darkness. I started to pick up speed when I realized I could still see Latana's tracks in the sandy dirt. Perhaps half a mile away, I stopped to look back. I could just make out the light of the fire atop the rise. There was no movement. I could still turn around and Killian would never know. Or I could keep going back and try to find a way home. I turned away and put one foot forward, then another. However, that was as far as I got. Well, what's this now? Hello there, pretty lady. That was chapter 2 of my book of Ladies and Cowboys. It is by me, Akili Rose, and it will be out for sale on March 1st, 2024 on Amazon. It is available in paperback or in ebook form, which you can pre-order. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you're enjoying the book so far. Have a great one.